Controversial play late in the game with Bradbury and Juju Smith-Schuster.
That was the best game of this whole tier.
Super Bowl 13 in 1979. That game was a true clash of titans.
It was a tie ball game, and Favre had the ball in his hands, and he chucks it about, 10, maybe 15 yards over Antonio Freeman's head. The big fraud.
I was a big fan of him at the time.
The people who are old enough to remember how awful this game used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Through the 80s and into the 90s, I'm sorry, most of the time, it was a running joke.
Okay, so we're going with best Super Bowls, but let me just give you a couple of disclaimers. One, I was going to go, and I was going to do best Super Bowls since 1980. But that would have had one glaring omission, so I had to extend a little beyond that.
Okay.
So I was going to do the 15 best since 1980, so we're doing the 16 best from 1979.
Okay.
You can do your own math from there.
Yeah, no, I know.
That's number one. And let me just ask you quickly, what would define a good Super Bowl in your mind?
A game where every play mattered.
Okay.
Competitive, still competitive in the fourth quarter. Game is hanging in the balance until like the last 7 or 8 minutes.
So,
yeah, no, that's it, yeah.
So those are good qualities, and I would also say it needs to be memorable. Right there, you can't just there's got to be something from the game that you remember.
Yeah,
Yes,
a
sir.
unique play.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So I tried to use those. Now, they're not all going to have all three of the things, but I tried to use those criteria. Okay, so we're going to start with Tier 3.
Here we go.
Tier 3. Rams-Bengals, Super Bowl 56.
Yeah.
I thought this was a good game. Not a great game, but there was a big pass interference penalty, or it might have been a defensive holding, if you remember, at the end of the game on Logan Wilson.
Absolutely,
Matthew
yeah.
Stafford going right down into the end zone. Final winning touchdown was scored in the final couple of minutes.
Suck it, Murray. That's right.
Close finishes, very important. Packers-Steelers 2010 season. I thought that was a fabulous game.
Underrated game.
That was a good game. Aaron Rodgers was terrific in that game. It was that great pass he threw to Greg Jennings, if you remember that.
The Clay Matthews causing the fumble. Big play.
on Mendenhall.
Absolutely true. It was a good football game. Packers-Broncos, Super Bowl 32. Another good game that was 31-24, I believe, was the final score in that one. That one is the one that put the Broncos on the map and dethroned Green Bay, but that was a significant game.
And correct me if I'm wrong, not to cut you off. The Packers had a shot right at the end.
It was a tie ball game, and Favre had the ball in his hands and threw it 10 yards over Antonio Freeman's head. The fraud. No one remembers that one, except, me, obviously. But that one never gets brought up. Tie ball game, 5 minutes left. He's got the ball in his hands, can drive down the field for a go-ahead field goal at least, and he chucks it about 10, maybe 15 yards over Antonio Freeman's head. The big fraud.
I was a big fan of him at the time, and I just remember they're like, this is how it's going to end, with a thud. Like, he was just like, at the end of that game.
He was exactly right.
It's a good game. The only other one I put in Tier 3 was Chiefs-Eagles last year. I thought it was a good game. 38-34, and I totally forgot until we saw the replay this week. It was 24-14 Philadelphia at half. There was the big controversial play late in the game with Bradbury and Juju Smith-Schuster.
That was the best game of this whole tier.
It was a good
The one
game.
last year was excellent.
Excellent football game. All right, Tier 2. You ready for Tier 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Colts Saints, Super Bowl 44.
I loved this game.
Peyton Manning gags, Drew Brees and Sean Payton win. That game had the onside kick to start the second half that everybody, I'm sure, I hope, remembers.
That Tracy Porter pick six is the most I've ever cheered for a neutral game I've ever watched, as I just punched myself in the face with the mic.
And that game was a duel of quarterbacks. There was
Yeah.
the Colts had the edge, score, and then Brees would score, and that's why New Orleans onside kicked, because they wanted to get the lead, and it worked. Pats Eagles, Super Bowl 52, tremendous football game. Again, lots of theater, lots of entertainment. Malcolm Butler benched. Brady turns it over at the end of the game in a strip sack. Good stuff in that game. Niners-Bengals 2. That was Super Bowl 23. Joe Montana's drive at the end of that game. 92 yards, I believe it was, in 3 minutes. And Montana was basically perfect on that drive to win it. Pats-Falcons, Super Bowl 51. The comeback, that's a 28-3 game. Steelers-Cardinals, sneaky good Super Bowl.
That's a good game.
Oh, yeah.
Santonio Holmes with that brilliant catch in the end zone with the toe tap, and he was the MVP of that game. Rams-Titans, Super Bowl 34. Murray doesn't like this game, says it was overrated.
It's just the most overrated finish of all time. Like, Mason was so close. Look at it. He wasn't.
Oh, no, he was never going to get in.
No.
I'll tell you what I liked about this game. The Rams were up 16-0. Tennessee did not forfeit its game plan. They kept running the ball. They stuck with it. It was Eddie George. They got back into it. They tied it with under 2 minutes to go. They tied it rather in the fourth quarter. Then the Rams went ahead, and the Titans went back down the field and got tackled at the 1. And Patriots-Panthers, Super Bowl 38, the Jake Delhomme game. 32-29, I believe, was the final. Lots of fireworks in that game. Adam Vinatieri wins it with a kick.
That was an underrated football game.
Yeah, not one of the greatest, like 5 greatest Super Bowls of all time.
Well, the first half blows. That's why.
No, it doesn't.
The
That
second quarter was good.
they kicked the crap out of the game. Alternated between it was so physical. It was a wonderfully physical game. And it was like the first and third quarters, they just beat the bag out of each other. And then in the second and fourth, it opened up because I think they had cracked each other so hard that they just both loosened up. Both halves sort of went the same way.
Yeah, all the scoring was in the second quarter, the even quarters.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and then Tier 1 consists of 5 Super Bowls that, to me, really are indisputable and how good the games were. Again, we'll start at the bottom of the list this time. Cowboys-Steelers, 35-31. That was Super Bowl 13 in 1979. It was the 78 season.
It's a Jackie Smith.
Yes, dropped the pass in the end zone, absolutely. That game was a true clash of titans. Both of those teams were loaded. They were terrific. They were rivals. It was basically a battle for America's team. Everyone called the Cowboys America's team. Steelers won the game, but it was a great, great football game. Super Bowl 25, Giants-Bills. 20-19, Scott Norwood, wide right. The Bill Belichick game plan. Whitney Houston singing the national anthem, if I have that right.
Yep.
That was just a great moment in American history, that game. All the way around. That was the Gulf War.
It was.
Super Bowl 49, Patriots over Seahawks. Personally, my favorite.
Mine too.
The best football game I've ever seen. Talk about teams that kick the crap out of each other, Mike. Every tackle was like a car accident. It was unreal. Sorry, Patriots fans. Super Bowl 42, Giants over Patriots. 18-0 goes down the drain. Unbelievable finish, unbelievable game. And then finally, Super Bowl 36, so you get this one back. Patriots beating the Rams, Adam Vinatieri's field goal to win it, Tom Brady's ascension to the national stage, which he would not relinquish for 20 years. Those, to me, were the 5 best games.
So there you go, Mazz's Tears. You can weigh in on that in our final hour. We'll take your calls on everything. The thing about the Super Bowl, the lead story is that it's a good game, and it has been a good game for a while. For the people who are old enough to remember how awful this game used to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
The 80s were bad.
through the 80s and into the 90s, I'm sorry, most of the time, like it was a running joke how bad the game was.
I mean, after Cowboys-Bills, for like 7 straight years, it was god-awful.
Well, Cowboys-Bills was horrible.
I meant Bills-Giants. Sorry.
Bills-Giants,
Bills-Giants.
right.
Yeah.
The Cowboys-Bills were horrible games.
Washington-Bills was awful.
There was this whole thing.
Niners-Chargers was garbage.
Yeah, it was usually, the Redskins, the Giants blowing out some AFC team. Then it was like the LA Rams blowing out the Redskins. There was always a blowout. 30 years, I want to say.
And blowout like 30-point wins.
Like, you had nothing to watch in the second half. And that's what the game used to be.
Yeah.
San Francisco, San Diego, remember that one? That was horrible.
God. And I want to say for like the last 20 years, they're almost always good and competitive.
Yeah, but the only one that sticks out to me as a major dud was the Seahawks win over Denver in New York.
Right, that's what it used to be.
43-8 or whatever it was.
Way it used to be every year, it felt like.